Story 1. I went on a safari with my family in the Serengeti by renting a few four-wheel drive safari vehicles, complete with local drivers. We chatted with our drivers about their experiences driving tourists around, and they told us this delightful story. One of their trips involved driving a group of around 9 to 10 people, including an entitled person named Entitled Person. Entitled Person was one of those individuals who apparently believed she had a special connection with animals. She kept insisting that the thing she wanted to do most was to pat a lion. Naturally, the drivers repeatedly told her that these were not domestic cats and that she was absolutely not allowed to touch the lions. Several days into the trip, they pulled over so the group could take pictures of a small pride of lions. The driver of one of the cars was talking about the lions and answering questions from the others in the vehicle, when, suddenly, one of the lionesses close to the car snarled, turned, and slashed at the vehicle with her claws, damaging the tire. I'm sure you can guess what happened. Entitled Person had waited until the driver was distracted and then reached out the window to pat the lioness. The lioness, understandably, reacted as any wild animal would when unexpectedly touched by becoming defensive and aggressive. The lions quickly took off after that. The driver called back to camp to report that they needed another vehicle to bring a spare tire and repair the damage. The replacement car arrived as quickly as the camp could arrange it. Afterward, the drivers immediately took the entire group back to camp and laid down strict rules. Entitled Person was grounded. The rest of the group was free to continue going out each day to observe the animals, provided they didn't do anything reckless. However, Entitled Person was required to stay at camp until it was time to move to the next location. When that time came, she would be driven directly to the next camp and left there until it was time to move again. This pattern continued for the remainder of the safari until it was time for her to return to town far away from any animal she might try to pet. Entitled Person apparently threw quite a tantrum about it, claiming that this would ruin her trip, insisting that no one got hurt, and arguing that she just needed a bit more time for the lion to get used to her, and then they would become friends. Unfortunately for her, when you're in the middle of the Serengeti, the drivers have full authority to enforce safety rules. Sure enough, Entitled Person spent the rest of her safari confined to the camps, doing nothing else until she was finally brought somewhere where the most dangerous animal she could safely pat was a local dog. Story 2. I was 15 years old at the time this happened. My mom had just picked me up from school, and we stopped by a beauty supply store on our way home. I was still wearing my school uniform, along with my mom's black work cardigan because I was cold. While she browsed the aisles, I held her basket and helped by grabbing items off the shelves for her to see. I'm actually about an inch taller than my mom, which made it easier for me to reach things for her. We were looking at something together when I decided to walk a few steps away to grab another item from a nearby aisle. I still had the basket full of our things in my hand. As I was scanning the shelf, I suddenly heard a loud "excuse me" and felt someone standing directly behind me. Thinking I was in her way, I quickly moved closer to the shelf and mumbled, "Sorry." The aisles weren't even that small, there was plenty of space to pass. Then, I felt a hand pushing on my shoulder. I turned around, startled, wondering why this stranger thought it was okay to touch me. When I turned around, I think she finally realized that I was not an employee, but just a teenager holding my mom's basket. Right then, my mom came around the corner and said, "My name, I found something else, come see." I immediately walked away from the woman and didn't look back. My mom asked what had happened, but I told her it was nothing, and that the woman probably just wanted to pass by. Honestly, it didn't seem that important at the time, and I didn't really process what had just happened. When we got to the cashier to check out, that same woman was standing there. She suddenly pointed toward me and shouted, "That's the employee who ignored me and refused to help me." The cashier looked confused and said, "Ma'am, that's a child." The woman snapped back, "You need to train your workers better. She didn't even ask if I needed help, she just ran off." The cashier calmly replied, "That's not an employee, that's a customer." My mom quickly realized that the woman was talking about me. She told me to wait outside while she handled the situation. So, I went out and got myself an ice cream while waiting. About 7 minutes later, my mom came out with our bags. When I asked what had happened, she explained that the woman thought I worked there just because I was wearing a black cardigan. My school uniform was completely visible underneath a white shirt, blue skirt and tie, white socks, and white shoes, all with my school's monogram on it. Apparently, the woman claimed she thought I ignored her because she was African American. My mom wasn't having any of that. She told the woman to leave us alone and warned her to stop making accusations before the police got involved for touching a minor. I still don't understand why she acted that way, but it definitely stuck with me. Some people just make assumptions without thinking things through. Story 3. For context, I'm reasonably unconventional appearance-wise, very multicolored hair, multiple tattoos and facial piercings, generally a bit scruffy looking. I definitely rock a look I'd be unlikely to get away with working retail, and today was wearing a black t-shirt. Welcome to Night Vale again, must bring out the nutters, with a pair of tie-dyed pants so baggy that they fit my fat butt with room for a few friends and maybe a surfboard. Honestly, no part of these pants aside from the waistband actually touches my skin, and I love them beyond all reason, fashion crime aside. I work in a school for very disadvantaged teenagers, and stupidly volunteered to do Christmas for them, which means a present for everyone enrolled, 26 girls, 36 boys, and food hampers for the families who otherwise won't have anything nice to eat over the holidays, about 30. I had 4 hours to get this done on a budget, and I'm exhausted and traumatized and very, very underpaid, thanks so very much. For gifts, I decided on perfume escalones. As incredible as I like to pretend to be sometimes, I doubted my ability to find something personal for all 62 kids in a single shopping trip. And it's a luxury they wouldn't otherwise be able to enjoy. So off to a major discount chemist I go. It was hell. There were more people in this pharmacy than I thought existed in my entire city, and of course all of them are in the perfume section. People are literally climbing over each other. It looked like the videos I've seen of Black Friday sales in America. Seriously, how do you do that to yourselves? Every year, I actually turned on my heel and walked back out to the van, but reminded myself it's for the kids several thousand times before diving back in. 40 minutes and some mild bruising later, I had 4 baskets full of perfume and cologne, and was carefully making my way towards the end of the queue, approximately 3.5 kilometers from the checkout, when my shoulder was firmly tapped. I looked over to see a total Karen in 3-for jeans, a pastel blouse, and the "I want to speak to the manager" haircut. Just a complete walking meme. Yes? I need one of those. She pointed to one of the perfumes in my topmost basket. They were over in the perfume section, but I'm pretty sure I got the last one. I turned and kept maneuvering my tower of baskets towards the queue. She stepped around me, nearly knocking over my baskets, and blocked the aisle. Staff can't just buy everything on sale before customers. Put them back. She shouted the last bit. Who shouts? I have never ever needed to shout. What the? I don't work here. I'm shopping. You're in my way. Move. It's hot. I'm already exhausted. I'm trying to do maths in my head. Do not mess with me. She reached into my basket and grabbed the perfume she wanted. My jaw hit the floor, and I genuinely had no idea how to respond. I wasn't going to fight a middle-aged woman for a $15 bottle of perfume. My other options didn't sound great either. Fight my way back to the front of the store, with my leaning tower of baskets, and search for another perfume in the right price range, or for a staff member to help me. So I just stared at her, completely baffled as to what was happening right that moment, and she stared back, as if daring me to do something. Thankfully, she had drawn the attention of a security guard, who took back the perfume, told her off for harassing customers, and asked her to continue her shopping or leave. Lovely security guard also took my baskets and put them behind the counter, so I could join the queue and pay for them when I got to the front. Bless him. I congratulated myself for surviving another "I don't work here" lady encounter and coming in under budget, and moved on to the next part of my shopping hell hampers. This required a trip to a major supermarket, and I knew I'd need about 4 trolleys worth of groceries. Inspired by the lovely security guard, I spoke to customer service when I got there, explained what I was doing, and they allowed me to bring each trolley to the customer service desk when it was full so I could continue shopping and pay all at once at the end. They also offered to help me get it all out to the van. Lovely customer service. I was halfway through trolley #3 when I hear an "excuse me." I turned around, thinking, "Oh no, not again, go away Karen," to see a perfectly nice-looking little old lady. Phew. Where will I find baking soda? Sorry, no idea. Baking soda was not on my list, and the only thing that mattered in that moment was my list, written in purple texta, because someone at my work must eat biros, on the back of a reading comprehension worksheet, crumpled and sweaty and nearly unreadable. What do you mean you have no idea? You're doing the shelves. She gestured around me, my trolley, my list, and the near-empty shelf behind me. I mean, if by doing the shelves she means removing 30 of everything from them, then sure. I was doing the shelves. I don't usually shop here. Ask up the front. I didn't think it was necessary to tell her that I didn't work there. I wasn't wearing red, and my pants can be seen from space, so even if her eyesight wasn't great, I wasn't in anything approaching a uniform, unless stoners have uniforms now. I wasn't even close to done for the day. I still had shopping to do. Then I had to get it all back to campus, unpack it, split it out into hampers and package it back up, wrap 62 presents, and write tags and cards for all of it. I had less than 2 hours left. I was running on pure adrenaline and a constant mantra of "it's for the kids." Which is, of course, when the nice little old lady revealed herself to be nothing more than a retired Karen and started screeching about bad service and calling managers. I couldn't even muster the care to respond. I just kept wandering down the aisles, periodically emptying shelves into my trolley. She followed me, screeching, for 2 whole aisles. Unfortunately for her, I work with teenagers, and there's no amount of noise I can't drown out. She was at the customer service desk when I went to deposit trolley #3, complaining about the rude staff member that wouldn't help her find baking soda. She didn't see me, so I continued on, leaving her to describe me to a baffled employee at the service desk. Sorry mate, I have stuff to do. Never volunteering to do Christmas again. Not without a raise, time off in lieu, and a puppy. Story 4. After reading posts here about Karens who try to steal Nintendo Switches for their horrible, troublesome children, it unlocked a memory of when I was 8 years old and got my first Nintendo Game Boy as a present from my godfather for getting good grades and making the honor roll every time. My parents bought a few games for it along with a carry case and some accessories. My mom and dad confirmed it, and my eldest sister would too. So, now on to the story. We were at the mall at a local restaurant named after the day that comes after Monday during the summer of 1989. My parents were having dinner with business associates while my sisters and I had things to occupy ourselves with while the grown-ups talked. I had my Game Boy and was enjoying Super Mario Land. I had to sit on the outside of the table in case I needed to use the bathroom. As I was playing, I felt eyes on me. I've always hated when people look over my shoulder at what I'm doing or playing. Lo and behold, a rude child was behind me. "Are you lost?" my mom asked him. I turned to see him, and then he shouted, "I want to play now." The restaurant customers looked at him, and I said, "No, you can't because I just got it." He then screamed for his mom, and in came Karen, who clearly didn't like being disturbed. She snapped at me to give her son my Game Boy. I said no, and she rolled her eyes, made a grab for it, and muttered something under her breath. My mom got up and moved into her face, saying, "What the heck do you think you're doing?" Karen shot back, "Your rude child stole my son's toy. I'm just taking it back." The thing is, my mom wasn't having it and went into full mama bear mode. I don't remember exactly what happened, but I'm pretty sure my mom was about to teach her a serious lesson. Karen and her child left, but not defeated. I went to the bathroom, and the child snuck over and tried to take my game case. But my dad's business associate saw him and called him out. The child screamed and ran off. He tried again while we were eating, but my mom saw him and he ran away again. My mom had me switch seats with my oldest sister, and I was sitting by the window that opened into the mall. The rude child snuck over again, but saw I wasn't sitting there and walked away. There were no more incidents until after the meal. I had pulled my Game Boy bag over my shoulder. As my parents were finishing up and waiting for the bill, I was suddenly grabbed and pulled through the window by Karen. She screamed at me, began to hit me, and yanked my Game Boy case, all while her child was screaming for his mommy to get me. She pulled too hard, and the strap broke, sending my Game Boy case flying into the fountain. Then Karen went bright red for about 5 seconds until my dad struck her in the face to stop the attack. My mom comforted me as I cried. From what she told me later, Karen went nuclear red after seeing my face. I had bruises and one of my baby teeth was missing. Both of my parents were livid. Karen got up and lunged at me again, but my mom backhanded her with all her strength and fury, knocking her out cold. Security was called to the scene, and the father of the rude child was summoned. This all happened after Karen told the infamous lie, "He stole my son's game case," etc., etc. But then her husband spoke up and said, "What game case?" She knew she was done for. The security camera had caught everything, and yes, my parents pressed charges. She was arrested, and in true Karen fashion, she tried to take my parents to court, but there was so much evidence against her that it went nowhere. Now for more drama. My eldest sister had slapped Karen's child because he was screaming for his mom to literally hurt me, which made him stop and look terrified of her. My dad's business friends fished my Game Boy case out of the fountain, but everything inside was ruined. I was heartbroken because Karen had destroyed the special present my godfather had given me. The next day, my dad took me to Toys R Us and bought me a new Game Boy, accessories, and all the replacement games I wanted. He even got me a better carry case. When we visited my godfather and told him what happened, he was furious and wanted to confront Karen for attacking me. When the rest of my family found out, they were just as angry and wanted to stand up for me too. Thankfully, I didn't need therapy because of my loving family and the support they gave me and the reassurance that they would always protect me from anyone who tried to hurt me. Story 5. So, first of all, in my country, more specifically, in my state, whenever we have more than 3 coronavirus cases, we go into a 3-day lockdown. It might seem excessive to some, but it actually works quite well, and usually, after about a week, restrictions can be lifted. Anyway, we had just started another 3-day lockdown a few days ago, and the day before it was announced, the stores were absolutely packed with panic buyers. We had to grab some groceries, and I also needed to pick up some personal hygiene products. Usually, if there are more than 4 coronavirus cases, I don't leave the house. Only 29% of my lungs function, so catching the virus would be extremely dangerous for me. As for wearing a mask, I struggle with it because I can't walk or move much while wearing one without hyperventilating. I do have a doctor's note, but even then, I still prefer to at least try to wear a mask whenever I can. And honestly, to all the people who falsely claim to have a medical condition just to avoid wearing a mask, please, just be considerate and wear one if you can. Anyway, I don't usually leave the house during outbreaks, but this time I had no choice. I needed to get those items. Now, about my brother. He's younger than me, but a bit bigger, and he has profound autism. He's nonverbal and has the cognitive abilities of about a 2-year-old. He doesn't fully understand the concept of wearing a mask, but believe me, we do try. Since both my brother and I are disabled, we have a disability parking permit. And that's where our story begins. We pulled up to our local grocery store, and the parking lot was pretty busy. It's a store we visit often because my little brother frequently requests sports drinks and frozen pizza. We have to keep him happy somehow. When we went to park in the disability space, both spots were taken. We noticed that the second spot was occupied by a car that had backed in, but it didn't have a disability permit. Instead, it had a "Cuties on Board" sticker. Since time outside poses a health risk for me, this meant we couldn't park there, and because of how the walkways are designed, we couldn't use the wheelchair ramp from anywhere else. That also meant I couldn't wear my mask for long, so in we went me, a tired girl without a mask, and my tall brother shouting "Whoa" at the top of his lungs. Most people tend to stay away from us when that happens, which honestly works in our favor. For context, that's what people in the store usually see: a tall, loud young man and a woman struggling to keep up while avoiding attention. This time, we were just stocking up for the lockdown. We didn't go overboard, but my mom's Irish, so she always insists on buying potatoes and ingredients for soda bread. I went off to grab my personal items, and when I came back, I noticed the staff had called a code 1. They do that frequently when my brother is in the store. A code 1 means they open a new register. The reasons are: they want to keep him happy, and B, he can be quite intimidating when upset. The store staff have always been very understanding, so they opened a new register for us. We headed to the register, and the cashier started scanning our items. That's when the star of the story, the entitled mom, showed up. She was holding a drooling little boy without a mask, which is fine since really young children aren't required to wear them, though it's still recommended. Karen herself was wearing a mask. For more context, my brother was not, since he had poked a hole through his last one with his tongue, and I wasn't wearing one because of my breathing issue. My mom, however, was wearing hers. Karen looked at us and said, "Excuse me, you opened a new register. Do you mind if I hop in front? I have to limit how much I talk to prevent exhaustion and reduce my risk of inhaling anything harmful." But before I could say much, my mom replied, "Sorry, no, we have to be quick, my daughter." Karen interrupted her, saying, "Well, my son and I have places to be, and it's risky out here." The cashier paused, scanning to speak with the woman, which immediately made my brother uneasy. The cashier said, "Ma'am, we usually open another register for this young man. Karen interrupted again, "But it's about to be lockdown. My baby is so little he can't wear a mask." Keep in mind, this baby looked to be around 7 years old. Karen then turned to the cashier and said, "And you and your 2 grown children aren't even wearing masks. Sir, you should push them to the back of the line." My brother's frustration grew. He started jumping up and down, yelling loudly, and flapping his arms. Then he began shouting right in Karen's face. Karen screamed, grabbed her child, and rushed off. We later saw her heading toward the car parked in the disability spot, the one without a permit. That pretty much confirmed the type of person she was. I understand that everyone was stressed because of the situation, but my brother's condition was clearly visible. He wears earmuffs, special sensory clothing, and other items that make it obvious he's disabled. My mom didn't even have time to apologize to Karen because I couldn't stay in the store much longer without my mask. We quickly paid the kind cashier and left. Story 6. I signed the lease on my current apartment on December 27, 2017. The start date on the lease was the 28th. I did the walkthrough and noted every single thing. Scuff marks, sloppy paint jobs, dozens of nail holes, dinged corners, cracked linoleum tiles, stains, spray paint on the doorknobs, and microwave everything. Clearly, a classy place. Anyway, I turned in the page they gave me along with another 2 pages of notes, listing every tiny thing that wasn't perfect. That should have clued them in on the kind of tenant I am, but I guess not. Before the final signing on the 27th, I talked with the apartment manager and asked if I could start bringing stuff in, but not actually take possession until the 1st, since they still needed a day or 2 to shampoo the carpets and repaint some areas. She said yes, of course, no problem. But the date on the lease was still December 28, 2017. I brought over boxes on the 28th, plugged in the refrigerator to get it cold for when I brought over food on the 1st. dropped off more boxes, and called it a day. On the 29th, I brought more items and checked the refrigerator, noticing it was only slightly cool while the freezer was at room temperature. Not cold at all, let alone freezing. I caught the office lady just before they closed that Friday, December 29th, and explained that the refrigerator seemed to be broken. It was a provided appliance, specifically listed in the lease along with the stove and dishwasher. She said no problem and sent a maintenance guy to check it out. He took about 2 minutes before saying, "It's broken." I replied, "Yes, that's why you're here. So, how do we fix it? I'm moving in on the 1st. He said, "Oh, okay, that's fine. I'll just get a working one from an empty apartment and switch them out." Great. I left to get more boxes. I was moving what I could with my car while working full-time, planning to borrow my dad's truck on the 31st to bring over my bed, food, and larger furniture. The 30th rolled around, still no refrigerator. I called the office, but there was no answer because it was Saturday. On the 31st, which was Sunday and New Year's Eve, I brought the rest of my stuff and put food in the somewhat cool refrigerator, hoping it wouldn't spoil. I called the office again, still no answer. January 1st, Monday. Surely now I could get some help. But no, of course not. On New Year's Day, the office was closed. Still, I dropped off my rent in the rent box. January 2nd, Tuesday, and the office was still closed because, apparently, no one likes to work right after the holidays. Most of my food was now definitely spoiled or at least untrustworthy. I threw away about $80 worth of groceries, but not before taking a photo of everything. I was officially upset at this point. Wednesday morning, January 3rd, I was at the office by 7:55 a.m. Just as the apartment manager rolled up to open for the day. She still looked tired, probably from celebrating New Year's. Meanwhile, I hadn't had a working refrigerator for 3 days and had to throw out a lot of food. I was not happy, to say the least. Still, I politely but firmly told her what was going on, showed her the picture of the spoiled food, and was promised I'd have a new refrigerator that day. Then I went to work. When I got home at 11 p.m., there was still no refrigerator. I did some searching online, and it took a while because the information wasn't easy to find, but I finally located the property owner's contact details. Around 1 a.m., I called and left a detailed and clearly frustrated voicemail, then went to bed. The next day, I woke up, went to work, and came home that night to find that the fridge fairy had finally paid me a visit. There was a working refrigerator in my kitchen, although it was placed awkwardly in the middle of the floor instead of in the space made for it, but whatever. I was just glad it worked. I could finally unpack and move forward. That was January 4th, 2018. Needless to say, it wasn't a great first impression of the place. Sorry for the long setup, now for the satisfying part. 2 weeks later, I came home to a note on my door saying I owed a certain amount in back rent. Back rent? I hadn't even lived there a full month yet. I went to the office to find out what was going on and was told I hadn't paid for the first 4 days of my lease. They said I had to pay that by the end of the month or face a fine. I reminded them that the apartment manager had said I could take possession on the 1st since they still had to clean the carpets and finish painting. I was politely told to go away because, as they said, the lease starts December 28th. Well, all right then. If they wanted me to abide strictly by the lease, I would, but so would they. I got a money order for the exact amount they claimed I owed and came back half an hour later to hand it over. The apartment manager was there, avoiding eye contact. She took the money order and started walking back to her office. "By the way," I said, "I'll be deducting 8 days of rent from February's payment, just a heads up." She stopped and looked at me in surprise. "What? Why, you can't just not pay the full amount of rent. You'll be fined." That's when I pulled out my phone, already open to the section of my state's tenant-landlord laws, and read aloud the part that basically says, if an amenity or appliance provided by the property owner or a guaranteed utility, such as water or heat, is listed in the lease as being the sole responsibility of the owner, And if that amenity, appliance, or utility is unavailable to the tenant for any number of days during their lease, then the tenant may subtract that many days' worth of rent from the next month's payment or receive a refund of the same amount if it is the last month of their lease. She stood there in confused silence, so I explained. That means that since, as you say, my lease started on the 28th, I didn't have a working refrigerator for the first 8 days. That's double the amount that I just paid for the so-called back rent. Therefore, come February, I will legally and rightfully withhold 8 days of rent because you couldn't honor the lease agreement and provide a working refrigerator when I moved in. She blinked a few times, then asked me to please wait while she made a phone call. I sat down and scrolled through Reddit while she went into her office. About 10 minutes later, she came back out holding my money order and said it was all just a misunderstanding, smiling nervously and insisting we forget the whole thing. I smiled back and said, I can't do that. The money order is already addressed to the apartment complex, so I can't cash or deposit it. Besides, you were the ones who said I had to abide by the lease agreement. I just did, and now you will too. Then I grabbed my things and said, well, I'll see you on the 1st. Have a good one, and left. February 1st rolled around, and I dropped off my rent minus 8 days along with a reminder note explaining why. I never heard another word about it. About 6 months later, my toilet developed a slow leak, a hairline crack on the inside of the tank that started staining the linoleum floor. Rather than drag things out and deal with the same back and forth as before, I decided to handle it properly from the start. I wrote a formal note that basically said, according to Housing Code 142.69 and related tenant protection laws, if the property owner does not complete required repairs within 2 weeks of written notification, the tenant may complete those repairs and deduct all related expenses from the next month's rent. I took the note to the main front desk and handed it to the staff member there. When she asked why I went to all that trouble instead of just submitting a simple maintenance request, I reminded her about the refrigerator fiasco. Her eyes widened in recognition, and she quickly assured me not to worry, they were on it. Sure enough, about 3 hours later, I had a brand new toilet installed. That was the moment I truly understood the importance of knowing your rights as a tenant. If you're a renter, take this as advice. Look up your tenant laws. They exist to protect you. You don't have to be rude or combative, just informed, firm, and ready to back up your position with the facts.